Hi, this is Colin Richards, President and founder of Lord & Richards. And today we're going to be answering another one of the questions that I often get when we sit down with folks for the very first time and learn more about their goals and their needs and their financial planning priorities. It's really part of what we call our financial independence review process, a process that recognizes that you may be concerned about events coming down the pike that could damage your retirement. And so we want to build a plan to achieve financial independence so you can retire without worry. That's what we're all about at Lord & Richards. And the question I often get is, okay, Colin, I understand that you guys do comprehensive planning. You touch all these key areas, income planning, you build a risk management plan, you build a health care or chronic illness plan, you build a tax and legacy plan. But what I'd like to understand is a little bit more about your investment philosophy. When you actually place dollars into investments, what is it that becomes your priority as a firm? And of course, people are wondering, is that in alignment with theirs? So I think more often than not, we are in fact in alignment with what people are thinking, but we just tend to look at it a little bit different. And so I'm going to use my whiteboard here in a moment with some colors and shapes that I think will make it a little bit easier to understand the priority of investing at Lord & Richards. Here's the first thing to know. The purpose of money should dictate where you put it. You need to have a goal-oriented or a purpose-oriented investment philosophy. That means that your investments serve your goals, not the other way around, making your goals the victim of what happens in your investments. And so if we're going to prioritize money according to its purpose, we need to identify different ways to invest money, or what I call different kinds of money, to achieve those purposes. So I'm going to start by drawing a couple of boxes here to identify in different colors these different kinds of money. And we're really going to have three broad areas. Now, there are many different ways to look at money, to invest money. We could be looking at it from a tax perspective. We could be looking at it from a planning perspective, such as healthcare. We could be talking about how it fits into your Social Security plan, estate plan, and so on. But what we're going to do is focus in on the simple, general purposes of money. And I've identified three kinds of money to support the purposes that my clients tend to have. As pre-retirees, whether you're 30 and looking forward to retirement, or whether you're 80 and looking back at the day you retired, these tend to be the kinds of money that best support those goals. Let me show you what I mean. The first kind of money we call short term, if I can write that clearly. Short term, or perhaps emergency type money. Short term or emergency type money. This is money that is designed for events, whether planned or unplanned, that need cash pretty much now or in the very near future. You say, well, what do you mean by that, Colin? Well, I'll give you a great example. When my daughter was just 4 or 5 years old, I woke up Julia and I said, Julia, today Daddy's going to take you anywhere in the world you want to go. And of course you think, wow, that's a big risk. What if she had said Monte Carlo or Paris or whatever? But I knew exactly what she was going to say. She was 4, maybe 5 at the time. And she'd been talking about it for months. She said, Disney World. I said, absolutely. You're all packed. We've already got the tickets. Let's go. And I got to be hero for a day. And that was exciting. But imagine if perhaps the money we had set aside for her vacation, I decided the day before to put it into Bitcoin or something like that. And I woke up that day and it was worth half what it was the day before. You'd say, that'd be a foolish thing to do. Well, certainly it would be. And so one of the first priorities for this kind of money is that it needs to be safe or principal protected. Money like this, whether it's for an emergency, something happened to your water heater, or a home improvement project, or a vacation, whatever it is, if it's short-term in nature, it needs to be kept safe. And in this regard, we recommend principal protected so that it's not going to have any losses ever. The second priority for this kind of money to achieve various goals is that it be liquid. Imagine if we had shown up at Disney World with stock certificates or certificates of deposit or gold bars. These things are not easy to convert into a Coke or an ice cream or whatever we're going to need it for. So money like this needs to be liquid. It's not just safe and principal protected, but it also needs to be kept liquid so it's easy to access. Making sense? And then I'm going to change the color for this third because each kind of money, the green, the blue, the red, each kind has two items you can emphasize and a third that you must compromise. I talk to engineers all the time. I have many clients who are engineers, and they've explained to me, yes, this seems to be a law in most areas. In rocket science or engineering, when the big boss comes down, he'll tell us, guys, I want it fast, I want it cheap, and I want it high quality. And they'll say, you got to pick two. You can have it fast and cheap if you don't want high quality, or you can have it high quality and fast if you're willing to pay, and so on. Well, it's the same way with money. Safety, liquidity, and growth are our three areas of compromise or emphasis. And in this case, for short-term money, we have to identify which of those three is least important to achieve the goal that a short-term part of your portfolio would achieve. And it looks like that's going to have to be growth, right? So we understand that if we get our money super conservative and safe, we keep it liquid, that it's not likely to grow very much. Make sense? Now here's a question. Should we put all of our money here? Undoubtedly not, because most of you that I'm talking to are really interested in growth as well. So that brings up our second kind of money, and that's called our growing reserve. Now I'll explain that word reserve in a moment, but for right now, we can already see that we've decided on this kind of money that we're going to emphasize growth. So that's going to be there. And in addition, we're probably going to need to keep that money liquid because I've identified it as an additional reserve, money that you could tap into for larger expenses. It may not need to be money that is available within 10 minutes, but it might be positioned so that you could get it within a couple of days. So this money also needs to be liquid. So guess what that means is going to be compromised on this kind of money. And by the way, this is a very familiar way of investing. This money has risk. So over here, I wrote growth. It should really be low growth or no growth, depending on where we put it. And over here in the middle column, under the growing reserve, we've compromised in the area of risk. And we understand that. If we want our money to grow and we want it to be liquid and accessible and able to move it around at a moment's notice, then we're going to be investing in things that have risk. Here's a key point, though. I just want to mention it now, and I'll dive deeper in another video. I believe that this money should be risk managed. Now, that's where we diverge. We begin to diverge from many other financial planners, brokers, and so on. We believe that risk is something that should be handled like a business would handle risk. When a business takes risk, they understand what their worst case scenarios are potentially, and they've all already taken steps in advance to mitigate that risk. So we call it a calculated risk. This is where a risk management plan really comes in. And it starts with choosing investments and choosing tools that will help us to manage risk so we don't have unlimited downside. Now, these first two areas are the areas that most of us already are doing in one form or another. A typical client that I might see who's ready to retire, perhaps has been working their whole life. Maybe they built up their portfolio, and let's just choose a round number. They have $1 million. Okay? And they've already identified, well, Colin, I know I probably shouldn't have all of my money in the short term. So I'm going to put maybe a few months' expenses over there. So let's call it $50,000. Now, by the way, do we only work with people that have $1 million? Absolutely not. It's a round number that I can work with. We work with folks with much more and much less. That's not the key here. The key is, how much should we put in a short-term location? Well, that tends to be about a few months' expenses, and it depends on what your budget is, but it's a good rule of thumb. Now, where would we put that kind of money in the short term? Where can we go that it's safe, it's liquid, and we compromise on growth? Well, that sounds a lot like money markets, savings accounts, checking accounts, maybe your mattress or a hole in the backyard. Okay, but in every case, it's safe, it's liquid, and we know we're not growing. Well, when we go over here to the growing reserve, a typical client like this that we meet for the first time might have the entire rest of their portfolio, maybe in a 401k or something like that, over here at risk, so that it can grow, right? That's the whole goal during your savings years. We call it the accumulation phase before retirement. And most folks are really absorbing a lot of risk in an effort to grow. And you don't necessarily have to do it that way, but that is the way that most folks build and accumulate. And so where are we going to invest that kind of money? Well, it's all the normal investments that you're used to seeing in your 401k or IRA or anywhere else. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, real estate, gold, other commodities, and so on. There's 16 different asset classes. Go for it. Okay, but the key here is that this kind of money is designed to grow, remain liquid, and we understand it has risk. So what is that third kind of money? Well, the third kind of money is probably the one that is most unusual to see before retirement, but has become one of the most important and popular choices in retirement. And I think it's not necessarily a matter of waiting until you're retired to get prepared. I think many of our clients have foreseen that this is an area that they need. This is money that really is going to serve your retirement income needs. It's going to serve all the key areas so that you can achieve financial independence. And when I use that word protected, what I mean is principal protected. So it's safe. It's principal protected. It's not going anywhere. You say, well, Colin, you've already got that there in your short term. Safe, right? Bank. Well, we might have to go somewhere else, but let's for the moment just deal with this philosophically. Well, if this money is going to be there for the rest of your life, for your retirement, if it's going to be the pool of money, the bucket of money, however you refer to it, from which we draw our primary budgeting needs, then what's the next priority? People tell me, well, I want that safe, but what else? Well, most people tell me, Colin, we're going to need that to grow because we've got things like inflation, we've got our own desires in retirement, and we can't have that money stagnant. The value of that would be cut in half over a typical retirement if it didn't grow. And you're absolutely right. It needs to be safe and growing. So guess what? That means you're going to compromise and it's going to be less liquid. So money like this is important in a portfolio. It's generally not easy or accessible within a traditional 401k, although there have been some innovations in recent years, in the last decade, where folks are able to do this. But often I see very little in this pool. And the question that people ask me is, well, Colin, what is the right balance? You know, this is what you tend to see, but what do you recommend? Well, that really gets into the issue of your age, how close you are to retirement, and other factors such as your risk tolerance. And we'll talk about more of those in another video. But for today, let's just identify that at Lord & Richards, we believe all three of these areas of money, three kinds of money, are important. And it allows us then to fulfill this key thought. The purpose of money should dictate where you put it. The purpose of money should dictate where you put it. If money is designed for the long haul, if it's designed to support you for the rest of your life, and you don't want to be worried about what markets are doing day in and day out and all that volatility, we might want to get that protected and growing. So that's going to fit our red column, the protected. If money is for a short-term need, I'm going to buy a car, or I'm going to pay a school bill, or I've got an emergency, that needs to probably go into the safe and liquid category, which is the first one, our green money, short-term. And then if money has no present immediate need, and it can act as a reserve, in other words, it's there to support you for potentially larger things that may come down the pike, both planned and unplanned. Maybe you want to buy a house, those kinds of things. Well, that money needs to be kept liquid, but it also needs to be kept growing. And so that's our growing reserve. Now, here's an important point. If you get the right balance, you can call yourself financially independent. Why? Because people who are financially independent do not need all of their money in their portfolio to be designated for retirement. So I hope this has been helpful for you today, the simple chart, 3 kinds of money. And don't forget our principle at Lord & Richards, the purpose of money dictates where you put it.